All right, so welcome to the maybe exciting episode. And this time we're going to be talking about the interplay of logic and emotion in decision making. So, a pretty broad and general topic. Welcome to another episode of Critical Weight Theory. And as I suggested today, we delve into the fascinating world of decision making, exploring how our thoughts and emotions interplay to shape our choices and actions. I'll draw on some quotes, examples, and psychological insights to understand this dynamic better. So let's dive in here. So, my first segment I'll call the power of thought. The world as we have created it is a process of our thinking. It cannot be changed without changing our thinking. So, that is a quote from Albert Einstein. He really was not just a scientist, but also a popular scientist and a philosopher, and from what I understand it, a bit of a pervert at times. But hey, what can you do? So, there's a lot of food for thought in that little quote, and that's largely what we're talking about here. So, it's a good idea to explore how our thinking patterns influence the world around us. The need for changing our thinking to bring about meaningful change is a very common thing. And, you know, that's really the first segment here is just think about that Einstein quote. Think about how, in order to change the world, we have to change our approach to thinking about it. So that leads to section two or segment two about embracing emotions in decision making. So, quite often when people talk about making a decision, it's sort of a binary choice. They say, it's either going to be a logical decision or an emotional one, and they're often pitted against each other. And certainly sometimes it can seem that way, but it's not always the case that, the emotions and the intellect are totally at odds. So it's a good idea to think about the role of positive emotions and gratitude in shaping our perceptions and decisions. And, think about how feeling lucky or fortunate can impact our decision making processes versus, a person feeling unlucky or unfortunate. If people feel like they have just rotten luck and don't have the world on their side, they're probably more likely to lash out and make, crappy, if not outright villainous decisions. It's not to say everyone who has bad luck or who complains about bad luck is a villain, but, quite often that's one of the sort of motifs in bad behavior is that people will do it as sort of a revenge thing, and they'll justify it because they've said, "Oh, I've been wronged by the world," you know. So that leads us to segment three, which is more specifically about the head versus the heart topic that I just brought up a bit ago. What does it mean when your head and heart are in two different places? How do we grapple with situations where we can't decide, or there's a conflict between what our brain is telling us and what our emotions are telling us? So, you really have to define the conflict between logical reasoning and emotional desires. Think of examples of decision making scenarios where this conflict is evident and, maybe compare it to your own situation. And there are some insights to be gathered if you just take a moment and think about things, like there's a Beastie Boys song where they say check yourself before you wreck yourself. And that's kind of what this is all about. When your head and heart are in different places, thoughts and emotions are in conflict, but you can find a balance between the two. So this brings us to segment four, the role of logic. So, an example of that would be all English people drive on the left side of the road. So in certain contexts, that would be false, right? Like if they went to a place where there were English people who didn't all drive on the left side of the road, then it would be a false statement. But if they are English people and they do all drive on the left side of the road, then it makes sense to say that, and it also makes sense to follow suit. Maybe that's what the traffic laws are over there. And there's the importance of logical consistency in decision making. That's basically what I'm trying to get at with my clumsy analogy. How logical decisions are based on evidence and can lead to reliable outcomes. So obviously, I tried to deal with exceptions to a rule. Like if an English person moved to the United States, the traffic rules would be a little bit different, and they would be, acting differently. Cat just leapt up on my shoulder. I don't know if you can hear the cat purring, but that was an interesting experience. Anyway, what's the role of emotion? It doesn't matter how big or small your contribution is. What is important is fulfilling your soul's purpose. That is a quote from Richard Barrett, and there might be some truth to that. I don't really believe in souls per se, at least not in a literal sense. But I understand the sentiment there. So your emotions and values drive your motivations and your actions. The significance of empathy and understanding and fostering deep connections with others is definitely something that, should be a factor in your life. You should have empathy. You should try to understand other people. You should try to have deep connections with people. And if you're not able to do that, well, something's wrong, either with you or with other people. It can be a combination of both, of course. So, on to segment 6, balancing logic and emotion. So, the best decisions often come from a balance between logic and emotion. So, from what I understand, there's something called a dual process theory, which is, like there's a system 1 that's fast, automatic, and emotional, and there's a system 2 that is slow, deliberate, and logical. And, things like emotional intelligence can be factored in, recognizing and managing emotions to improve decision outcomes. And, it's important to think about combining logical reasoning with emotional intelligence if you want to have holistic decisions. So sometimes you can think about your thinking, think about your emotions, and, try to manage them. And maybe you'll have some positive outcomes from doing that. Like as dorky as it sounds, maybe even write stuff down in a diary or a journal or whatever you want to call it. So segment 7, real life examples and practical tips. So decision making is a complicated thing sometimes, even if we don't really think about it. Just about any sort of way we interact with the world will have some consequences, even if we don't really know what those consequences are. Of course, one of the ways of terming that is the butterfly effect. Like if it's named after a Ray Bradbury story where a hunter goes back into the past to shoot a T-Rex or something like that, and he steps on a butterfly and it forever changes the course of history. Well, it's something like that, like there are definitely a lot of different things that have happened in the past that really had a strange impact on the eventual future. So you might logically know that a particular decision is the best choice, but emotionally you can feel drawn to a different option, and that's why it's so important to try to think about, the pros and cons of what your decisions are. You know, it's a complex thing, but if you actually stop and think about things, you might arrive at one of the best conclusions available. But it requires patience. Understand not every situation allows that. Sometimes you have to make split decisions, but in a lot of cases, maybe even a majority of cases, you can actually stop and think things through a little bit. So, as far as practical scenarios, you've got career choices, relationships, basic life decisions, or complex ones, I suppose. And it's a good thing to try to align logic and emotion in your decision making and manage internal conflicts and make well-rounded decisions. Try to have the best, most just, and happiest outcome that you can. So, in conclusion, understanding the interplay between logic and emotion can significantly enhance our decision making abilities. By acknowledging and balancing both aspects, we can navigate complex situations more effectively. Remember, the best decisions often come from a harmonious integration of our rational minds and emotional hearts. So, thank you for tuning into critical weight theory. You can join me next time as I continue to explore intriguing topics that shape our lives. Or maybe I'll do a dumb movie or TV show review. I don't do those as often as I maybe should, but it takes work to like watch a movie and then think about what you're going to talk about and research the movie a little bit, gather some notes together, and all that kind of stuff. It's the same reason I don't often have guests anymore, because for one thing, like it's hard to even agree on a time and a date to actually record the thing. But also, it's sometimes just easier to speak into a microphone on your own and just do things that way. So, until next time, keep thinking, feeling, and making great decisions. I know some of you out there are doing the right things, so good on you.